This is the story of coming home, not to a house, but to the land. We'd been away, far from the dirt and blue sky of home, wandering through temples in Thailand, floating in warm seas, and learning the taste of new things. But Chimney Creek Farm waited for us, unchanged in its wildness, and yet when we returned, we found it had changed in ways that broke our hearts. This video tells the story of our first days back on the homestead after weeks away, of what we found and what we lost, of the garden we tried to keep alive with hope and mulch and water, and of the family who came to help us rebuild it with strong hands and tender hearts. And it's about grief, not the kind that comes in loud bursts, but the kind that sinks into your skin like heat from the sun, and it's about resilience, the kind that rises like seedlings through broken earth. It's about what it means to love a piece of land so much that its survival becomes part of your own.
I could probably cut all that up now and put it through the mulcher.
The first thing that we learnt was 3 of our baby chicks had died while we were gone. I walked outside just after dawn the first morning that we got back and to go out and look at the garden that we'd built with so much hope. Whole plants had died. And I stood there for a long time, in the quiet, in the ruin. I didn't cry, but I felt like it, that sinking ache in your chest when something you've loved is gone. I'd been given a lot of these plants as seedlings and I'd grown a lot of them from seed myself. And I just had to put the camera down. I didn't film for a while. We'd had a very, very hot summer and not a lot of rain, but among the ruin there were some small rebellions. The native wattle stood tall, fierce and untouched. The blackwood native wattle was fine. There was one spaghetti squash on the vine, the survivor. The potato plants in the hay bales were flowering, a quiet miracle. Soon we'll dig beneath that straw and hopefully we'll find some little treasures. That first morning I walked through the garden like a ghost. But the plants, the ones still standing, they whispered, "We're still here." The capsicum and chili plants were loving the heat. One chili bush was fruiting so prolifically I thought it might explode with pride. The white daikon radish and the red amaranth that were presents from, or the seeds were presents from our permaculture teacher, were doing really well. We were also very excited to find that our olive tree actually had its first 2 fruits, small, green, brave. The loquat or the loquat tree was doing really well. The rosemary and the green onions had survived, and we even had little kale seedlings coming up and little cucumbers forming on the vines. Kathy's sweet peas weren't looking too good though. A couple of weeks later, Paul's parents, Chris and Rex, arrived from New Zealand, 3.5 years since we'd seen them. They were with us the first day we found this land, but they hadn't seen what it had become. So now they were here, not just to visit, but to help.
What are you doing there?
I don't know, this little thing here.
Yeah, but what are you doing?
Putting mulch and stuff around it.
Yeah, nice. So I was just walking out here showing Mum the plants and the Cootamundra wattle and then I was just showing Mum the mulberry and that it's going really well. And then I just saw our friend here.
The snake's obviously feeling threatened because it starts hissing.
No.
Paul and Chris freak themselves out by standing on each other. I'm not really sure what kind of snake this is, but if you know what it is, let us know in the comments below. The snake is in that long grass against the fence line there. We used to have an old water trough here, so I think the snake is kind of lingering around here because he's thirsty. So we gave it space and let it be. Say hello to YouTube.
Hi.
Chris and Rex jumped in like they'd been waiting for this work. They came here with us to Chimney Creek Farm the first time that we laid eyes on it, when it was nothing but dust and dreams, and they've been watching us on our YouTube journey, but they saw the garden that we'd built and now they've seen what was left of it, so they rolled up their sleeves. That's what love looks like sometimes. A wheelbarrow full of mulch and quiet hands that get to work. We'd laid out cardboard for garden beds before we left, and we'd just picked up some soil and mushroom compost. So we started to lay the garden beds down.
She goes, it's 10 o'clock. I said, oh yeah, nearly cup of time. I was old, I was young, I was sitting in the sun, I was tired of the run, I was done.
Chris and Rex went into town and bought us some plants for our garden to replace the ones that had died. We got the fresco candy daisies for our willow garden, and then we got the lemon thyme, the silver beet, some giant silver beet actually, and some Detroit red beetroot and some rainbow chard or rainbow silver beet.
And the pain I'd been feeling washed away to return another day.
Rex and Chris mulched all our raised garden beds, and Rex built some rock gardens around the lipstick maple and the rare tenterfield mint and the rosemary. And when he ran out of rocks, we actually started using old branches from trees to sort of line the garden.
How the world is the mess means that every heart and soul needs to be whole. And the road signs keep changing as the road stretches out ahead. And the mood keeps on changing. All I want to do is lie down in bed.
So the rosemary, the green onions and the strawberries are doing quite well. The bunching shallots and the tiny little kale seedling look a lot healthier now. Paul disturbed the roots of this big old rosemary here, which is in a big blue pot, which was sort of obviously root bound and overgrowing. So I'm not sure if that one is going to survive in the end. The baby cukes and the parsley are growing really well here and looking a lot healthier. Paul planted our fresco candy daisies in our willow garden.
How are you? Are you blue? I can sense a sadness in you. Don't you worry, every storm passes on.
These little daisies are very cute. They actually have flowers of purple and white, and the more you deadhead them, the more the flowers come back, and it's just a beautiful little bush of daisies. Chris and Rex bought us these plants, or sent us some money to get these plants for Willow's garden last October. So I spent some time separating the silver beet, the rainbow chard, the Detroit red beetroot out, and I planted them all out into this garden bed here. And I watered it in with some seaweed as well and some worm tea. But unfortunately, the heat had no mercy, and it was a heat wave at this time. So within days, most of our silver beet had died, and the rainbow chard just curled in on itself. Everything wilted, basically. In spite of all that, we did have a few beetroot plants that still clung on, and 2 of the giant silver beet ended up growing really strong and bold. This garden bed actually becomes really prolific and feeds us for at least 6 months, but I'll show you the update of this bed in another video coming up soon. The giant silver beet fed us and our chickens for at least 6 months, and with the beetroot I ended up harvesting that, and I sliced it up and pickled it and sealed it into jars. I was so excited to get these little seedlings into the ground, but next time I'll wait for a cooler day. Once the new mulch was laid down by Chris and Rex and the garden drank deep again, something shifted in me. Chris and Rex didn't just water the plants, they watered my spirit. With every shovel of compost and every bucket poured gently at the roots, they reminded me that this land is not mine to master, but to tend, to listen to, and to partner with. The sun still beat down, the damage wasn't undone, but the garden was getting what it needed now: care. Gentle, steady, patient care. And somehow so was I. I looked around at all the garden beds now tucked in with straw and seaweed, and the colours were just starting to come back. The wilt lifting just a little. And for the first time since we returned, I felt hope. Not because everything was okay, but because everything was being loved. I could see the road ahead again, not as something long and lonely, but as a path I was no longer walking alone.
Across the river, the sound is changing. Across the river, I can hear a different song. Slow rains falling as I'm walking home.
These citrus trees in pots here I grew from seed. We're going to get them out into the ground next spring. I don't want to put them in the ground now because I feel like the frost is going to be a bit too much for them, so I want them to get established well before they get their first frost. Look at this beautiful spaghetti squash. This was from Kathy from Little Garden Big Dreams, and I can't wait to eat this one. There's lots more tiny little spaghetti squash trying to form there. Hopefully we can nurse these vines back to health. This was the loofah vine that was going really well, that was given to us as a gift from Lana, our permaculture teacher, and there was an actual loofah starting to form, but the whole vine died while we were away. The hot lip salvia still survived as well, and Paul made cow soy one night, a dish that he learned to make in Chiang Mai. Chris and Rex only had a few more days with us. Time, like water in summer, was slipping through our fingers, but Rex was determined. He'd set his heart on finishing the front garden, turning it into a proper rock garden, one stone at a time, not just for us but for this land, for what it meant to him, and for what it would mean to us when he was gone. We'd already used up all the rocks we had, and the branches, though beautiful, just didn't carry the same weight. So we jumped in the car, grabbed some gloves, and headed out to the back of the property. Out there among the grasses and the dry gullies we searched. Some rocks were heavy, sun-baked and stubborn. Some were buried beneath roots waiting to be unearthed. And the wind carried dust across the paddocks, and the eagles, always watching, circled overhead. Once we'd found enough, we thought, to build something lasting, we loaded them up, and I saw something on Rex's face, a kind of quiet joy, a knowing that even though he couldn't stay, part of him always would, in those rocks, in that garden. in the love that went into every piece we placed by hand.
Late night, flickering lights, loud crowds on the street as I walk by.
Rex and Paul put some rocks around Willow's garden, and Truffles, the puppy, was content just to watch. Then Rex started on the front garden. The first thing he did was get a garden hose and just lay it out in the design that we wanted. And then he went along with a little garden hoe, digging out a little line where the rocks would go into the groove. I wanted the curves of the rock garden to look more natural, so I didn't want it in a straight line. Day after day they worked. Rex and Chris, hands in the earth, shaping the front garden into something strong and steady. A rock garden that wouldn't just survive the sun but honour it. Stone by stone they built it, each one placed with care, with thought. While we were busy dreaming in flowers and roots, Paul's mind wandered to what lies beneath, the soil, the system, the cycle of it all. He walked over to the old pallets we'd had stacked on the ground for ages, weather-worn and silvered by time. They'd once held deliveries, things from far away, but now maybe they could be used to hold something more important, our future compost. He studied them like a craftsman, measuring with his eyes, imagining how they might form the bones of something useful, a bigger, stronger compost bay. Not just for scraps, but for transformation. The garden would need it. All this life we were planting would soon give way to clippings and cuttings, and we need somewhere for all of that matter to break down and rise again as food for the soil. It was time to give the garden some more life, so we headed down the long, dusty dirt track to Sarah's nursery at Mole River. The land was dry, golden, shimmering with heat, but the promise of green kept us moving forward. The nursery felt like a hidden oasis, and we left with the back of the car overflowing, grevilleas and bottlebrush and senna sensations and apricot charms, so many names, so many roots, ready for new soil, each one chosen with care. These two grevilleas were chosen to represent Rex and Chris in the garden. So the grevillea elegans, or long john, was one that Rex picked to represent himself in the garden, and it just has a burst of red that refuses to go unnoticed. And then the Simply Sarah grevillea was picked to represent Chris in the garden, which blooms with soft, warm pinks. They're delicate but bold. The senna sensation caught our eyes for its brilliant yellow flowers, like sunshine bundled up and tied to a branch. They weren't just chosen for their beauty, but for their resilience, for their ability to thrive where others might wither. I looked at all those plants and felt a strange, quiet joy. This wasn't just gardening. It was story keeping. It was remembering. It was love. In roots and rocks and soil. The winter rouge brings soft white star-like flowers that bloom in the cooler months when everything else is sleeping. And then came the calistemon pungens, those fiery bottle brushes, bold and upright, and we're hoping that they're going to create a little bit of a windbreak for us. On the western side, where we get the cold winter breezes, the new young leaves, often at the top, are often tinged red, and they give the colour before the flowers even arrive.
Someone singing about the heartaches of her life.
While Chris and Rex pressed on with the rock garden, stone by stone, Paul turned his focus to the seasons ahead. The sun still scorched our backs by day, but we knew that the frost would come, as it always does, without warning and without mercy. So Paul took up the axe, out by the woodpile beneath the ghost gums and Open sky, he split old rounds of ironbark and gum tree, the rhythm of it steady and grounding. It wasn't just firewood he was stacking, it was peace of mind, security, warmth for the cold nights still ahead. There's something ancient about chopping wood, the way it ties your body to the land, the way it demands your full attention. And as the pile grew, neatly stacked inside by the fire, I felt grateful. Grateful to be with a man who understands the quiet work of keeping a home alive, not just the garden, not just the fire, but all of us. Rock gardens can be part of a permaculture design, but it just depends on how they're used. Permaculture is about working with nature to create resilient, sustainable and productive ecosystems. So any feature, like a rock garden, needs to serve multiple functions and support ecological health. Rocks absorb and store heat, which can extend the growing season or support heat-loving plants. They can also slow runoff or reduce erosion and help with drainage in sloped or poor soil areas. Rock gardens, they can also provide homes for beneficial insects like lizards and frogs and other small creatures. We had roasted and stuffed golden nugget pumpkins another night. But then, as it always does out here, the sky changed and the air grew thick. Rex set down his garden hoe, Chris brushed the soil from her hands, and Paul laid the axe against the old fence. The work stopped as the first cracks of thunder rolled across the hills. We hadn't planned to stop, but sometimes the land tells you when to rest, and out here you learn to listen. The summer storm rolled in hard and sudden, breaking open the dry afternoon and sending us all scrambling for cover. The storm had raged, then softened, then passed as quickly as it had come, and we cooked our dinner on the camp oven on the fire. The kind of meal that feels like shelter. We sat around the flames watching the sky fall into dusk.
All the years that I've wasted trying to find it, all that I go through for my peace of mind, let it all